It's May the 9th, 2022, and our reading today in the book of Job is in chapter 6. Then Job replied, "If only my anguish could be weighed and all my misery be placed on the scales. It would surely outweigh the sand of the seas. No wonder my words have been impetuous. The arrows of the Almighty are in me. My spirit drinks in their poison. God's terrors are marshaled against me. Does a wild donkey bray when it has grass, or an ox bellow when it has fodder? Is tasteless food eaten without salt, or is there flavor in the white of an egg? I refuse to touch it. Such food makes me ill. Oh, that I might have my request, that God would grant what I hope for, that God would be willing to crush me, to let loose his hand and cut me off. Then I would still have this consolation, my joy in unrelenting pain, that I'd not denied the words of the Holy One. What strength do I have that I should still hope? What prospects that I should be patient? Do I have the strength of stone? Is my flesh bronze? Do I have any power to help myself now that success has been driven from me? A despairing man should have the devotion of his friends, even though he forsakes the fear of the Almighty. But my brothers are as undependable as intermittent streams, as the streams that overflow when darkened by thawing ice and swollen with melting snow, but that cease to flow in the dry season, and in the heat vanish from their channels. Caravans turn aside from their routes, they go up into the wasteland and perish. The caravans of Tema look for water, the traveling merchants of Sheba look in hope. They are distressed because they had been confident. They arrive there only to be disappointed. Now you too have proved to be of no help. You see something dreadful and are afraid. Have I ever said, give something on my behalf, pay a ransom for me from your wealth, deliver me from the hand of the enemy, ransom me from the clutches of the ruthless? Teach me, and I will be quiet. Show me where I've been wrong. How painful are honest words, but what do your arguments prove? Do you mean to correct what I say and treat the words of a despairing man as wind? You would even cast lots for the fatherless and barter away your friend. But now be so kind as to look at me. Would I lie to your face? Relent, do not be unjust, reconsider, for my integrity is at stake. Is there any wickedness on my lips? Can my mouth not discern malice? Amen. Just excuse me. There we are. A bit more light. Amen. Well, now we have Job's reply, his first reply in chapter 6 to the first friend who had spoken to him in the earlier chapters, and that was Eliphaz. In fact, we will, because there are three friends, we'll have three cycles like this along the way. And this is the first one of 8 main speeches, some of which are over more than one chapter, that Job has to share with his friends. And we overhear, obviously, the conversation. And what we find is it's a bit like peeling an onion. Everything is stripped away. It's a painful business. There's lots of tears. Everything circumstantially has been stripped away from Job in the early chapters, but this has led to another stripping. He's stripped bare, as it were, in his soul. But actually, there's something wonderful that comes out of that. I think this is how we should view these chapters, because what we have through that process is the revelation of a true worshipper, a man Unlike what Satan thought and said about him, a man who really does love his God for God's sake. And that's true worship. This chapter splits well into two parts, and I'm using the headings here of the commentary that I mentioned, the Book of Job by Christopher Ash. It's really the most helpful thing I've read, and it really helps us to get the main divisions, but to explain bit by bit the argument, the line of thought. It's not easy, and sometimes nobody really quite knows what is going on. I'm not surprised at that because, again, that is so true to life of a man who's in turmoil, a man whose whole frame is burdened, his mind is cracking up. But there are some remarkable insights here which we can draw out along the way. Verses 1 to 13, Christopher Ash's heading is this: the wrath of God is an unbearable pain. This is why Job is crying out in misery. Verse 2, and with words that are impetuous, a little bit wild, a little bit out of control in some ways, in verse 3. And his friends, they don't like that. They don't think he should be behaving like this. They really are going to rebuke him for this. But of course, he is like this because he's facing the biggest problem he's ever faced, and probably that anybody, any believer, could ever face. It's the problem, verse 4, of God, the Almighty. The arrows of the Almighty are in me. My spirit drinks in their poison. God's terrors are marshaled against me. He understands. He has enough of an understanding and vision of the true and living God to understand that somehow God is doing this. And his hand, not to punish and destroy, but somehow to chasten, to humble, to educate him. His hand, God's hand, is on him. And it's painful. Verses 5 to 7 is an interesting little section. It's all about horrible food. If you were presented in a restaurant with foul-smelling, ugly, repulsive food, you wouldn't want anything to do with it. You'd send it back. I can't eat this. That's what he's saying there. Is he talking about the food that's been presented to him of his circumstances, the things that have happened? Probably better than that. He's talking about the false teaching that's been put on a plate, plonked in front of him by his friends. There we are. That's what we believe. Go on, eat that. And he can't stomach it. His response in verses 8 to 10, as we've seen before, I just want to die. And that will actually bring, verse 9, this is his hope that God would be willing to crush me. I just want to be taken out of this world. Because in that he would find a consolation, verse 10, even joy, that I had not denied the words of the Holy One. That's one of the sort of instincts, the heartbeat of a true believer. I'd rather die. I'd rather be taken out of this world than to be left in it to enjoy and have a kind of happy-go-lucky life, but to end up denying Christ. Please, Lord, take me if it will prevent that. So verses 1 to 13, the wrath of God is an unbearable pain. But then verses 14 to 30, religion brings no comfort. These men are called Job's comforters in an ironic way, because what they bring to him, the religious teaching they bring to him, brings no comfort. And in these verses, he turns specifically to them and talks about them and to them. These counselors, these comforters, who are actually false teachers. And they're bringing this traditional, empty, um, seeming wisdom. In fact, it's empty, worldly wisdom. It has no heavenly, no truly godly power that can connect with him and his need at this time. So, verses 15 to 17, he has some very harsh words to say about them. But I think this is true and accurate. And he uses a wonderful illustration, verses 18 and following. He said, imagine a group of traders traveling through the deserts in their caravans. And they're running out of water. And they go up um, into the highlands, into the wastelands, or they want to get away from that, and they want to get to the place where they've had water before, in a it's what's called a wadi in a desert, like a big gully that when it rains fills with water, and they found that before, and they get there and it's dry as a bone. There's nothing there. That's false religion for you. That's false teaching for you. And his pain and problems is bad enough without being fed that kind of filth, really, which will just do him no good at all. All I'm asking for, Job says, is just that you'll be real friends to me now, verse 14, really devoted to me. And I'm asking you, verse 24, that you'll teach me the truth, the true way. What you're saying to me, it doesn't connect with me. It doesn't help me. It's false teaching. It's the prosperity gospel. It's the liberal social gospel, whatever it is. That can't help a man like me in the depths of pain like this. Now, they would have said to him in response to verse 24, well, we are teaching you. We're trying to help you. We're bringing you discussion and devotion of these things. But like I keep saying, and we want to keep making this point, this is religion, man-made, man-centered. There's no real grace here. There's no real love here. There's no cross in their religion. This is empty, hopeless, man-centered, the wisdom of this world. And for what Job is going through, and while, I hope we'll never have to go through anything like Job does, but living in a fallen world, a broken world, a world full of trouble, we know that as believers, we will go through something Job-like in our lives at some point. It's not the false religion that can help us, because it doesn't. There's no comfort in that. What do we need? We need true comfort, true love, true wisdom. It's so interesting to me that Christopher Ash, in his commentary on Job, the subtitle is The Wisdom of the Cross. That's what we need. And that's what we will get, shining through, sometimes clearly, sometimes mysteriously, but particularly through Job's pain and cries, the longing for the true, heavenly, spiritual wisdom that will only come ultimately through Jesus Christ and him crucified.